I'm Wendy Wilson, and I'd like to welcome you to another edition of Realizing Potential. I'm excited today to share this platform with you and introduce to a small group of people my colleague. He is Dr. Mark Thomas, responsible for the Center for Undergraduate Research here at Albany State University, and has a expansive portfolio, which includes his acumen for sociology and psychology. But as of late, we've been partnering on a mental health and wellness initiative here at Albany State University. And I've learned a great deal and wanted to share that knowledge that I have learned, but we'll have it come from Dr. Thomas just in a short period of time and the impact that he's made. Without further ado, Mark, thank you so much for joining me today. How are you?
Oh, I'm awesome. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. I'm fine. Share with the viewers a little bit about your background. I know you teach classes in sociology, psychology, of a broad acumen in both of those areas, but familiarize our viewers with your academic pursuits, what led up to you working here at Albany State University, and then what you do on a daily basis.
Well, as you said, I teach psychology mostly. Mm-hmm. I'm the psychology program coordinator on top of other things. And my degree is a little weird. Instead of having a degree in psychology, I have one of those, but I also have a degree in cognitive science. Cognitive science is an interdisciplinary study of the mind. And then I have a master's degree, so that's my doctorate. I have a master's degree in clinical psychology. And of those two degrees, only two classes overlap. So I truly have two different graduate degrees. And when I did clinical work, I did that for the state of Mississippi for a while. I worked with people who had attempted suicide and adults with what was then called mental retardation, which is now intellectual disabilities. Mm-hmm. One of the classes that I do teach here at Albany State is the psychology of stress. And that very much relates to this whole mental health thing.
Yes.
So that I kind of decided I could put something together for my students that would help them. So like when we first started with the lockdown, I actually gave them some do's and don'ts about social distancing and being isolated and that sort of stuff, right? So I want to do this on a little bit bigger scale and provide some things for my students that was kind of like, well, if I'm doing it for my students, why can't we just give it to everybody else?
Outstanding. And let's pause right there and kind of put some full context to what you're currently doing and what you're involved in and how we want to broaden it to impact the entire campus, if we will. So as you shared earlier, the world has been on lockdown, if you will, as it relates to the whole COVID pandemic. Here at Albany State University, like I know so many other post-secondary institutions, we had to quickly transition from being our normal lives of just day-to-day campus interaction to then transitioning quickly in the name of health and safety to an online format. That's one thing. Then we were naively thinking that we were going to quickly get past this and that was going to be temporary, that model that we were under. Then we move into the fall semester. Now we're in the spring semester and we're operating under a hybrid model. But nonetheless, our lives have shifted drastically. And what you and I have been discussing as it relates to mental health and wellness, that is the president, she's very passionate about that and remains very concerned about the overall being of our students and those that are responsible for their development, which is our faculty and staff. So we have this ongoing initiative. We hope to grow it. And you and I were, again, having a conversation a couple of weeks ago, and you were sharing this instrument with me and how you wanted to roll it out. And I was struck, and I would like for you to share that with our viewers about how we do not understand the impact of stress and how those subtle moments can turn into something very huge. And if you don't get it under control early on, it can get out of control. You may not be able to always recover. Share a little bit about that.
All right. So, we should have some t-shirts made that say, how's your bucket? That's what we should do. So here's the thing. Everybody has stress, right? And you function under different levels of stress, depending upon who the person is. Some people function better under high levels and other people function better under low levels. So we all have our normal amount of stress that we carry, and it varies from person to person. Well, you can imagine that you're carrying around your stress in a bucket. So stress happens and it goes into your bucket. And we're constantly taking stuff out of that bucket all the time. We're getting rid of stress. So that's okay, right? The problem comes when we have like big life changes happen, or maybe a lot of little life changes jump on us at one time and gang up on us. What happens is these go into our bucket, and if we don't empty our bucket out fast enough, if it fills up and overflows, then we're at high risk for developing mental disorders or mental illnesses. So really and truly, what people need to try to do, and what we all need to try to do, I say people, I'm including me in this, we need to try to manage our buckets. So we need to say, okay, this stress, I got no choice, I got to face it, because some stress you have to have in your life, you can't avoid it. You walk out to go to work, you've got a flat tire, there's nothing you can do but deal with a flat tire, right? You had no choice about that. Well, that's stress, and it goes in your bucket. How you deal with that stress depends on how long it stays in your bucket and what effect it has. Mm-hmm. So the trick is to remove stuff from your bucket and not let your bucket overflow. Yeah. You can also do things to make your bucket bigger, right? And the impact that this has on people that they don't realize, this instrument that you mentioned, which was the Holmes-Rahe Stress Inventory, it's got a long technical name, but it was made by Holmes and Rahe in 1967. It's been around a long time. It's been studied a lot. Depending upon how high you score on that, it will successfully predict how sick you're going to be over the next 2 years. So how many days off of work are you going to have because you have to call in sick, right? And all that is related to stress, because stress affects every one of your systems in your body. Mm. So it affects your biological health. It affects your psychological health. And really and truly, what I want us to be able to do is get rid of the stress. People with what used to be called type A personality, which is now called type A behavior pattern. Why they changed the name, I have no idea, other than annoy me. But it's now called type A behavior pattern. These are people who are workaholics, who are really hostile about time. They're pushed for time. They're always late. They're always overbooked. They can't do one thing at a time. They have to try to multitask, right? And they're hostile about their time. As it turns out, they live about 5 years shorter than everybody else. Mm. And the reason is because stress causes hormones to be released into their blood too often, in particular cortisol, which is nicknamed the stress hormone. And this causes their arteries to get hardened, leads to coronary disease, and they have heart attacks and die, right? So if you manage your stress and you're a type A behavior pattern person, you can take back 5 years of your life that you wouldn't have. So what I want to do is give somebody 5 years of their life with this.
Yes.
That'd be awesome, right?
Well, I'm on board. I took the test, and when I didn't, was probably trying to multitask when I was doing it. And so the number, I was like, this can't be right, a ridiculous number. Then I realized I didn't read the directions. You had said just to focus on the last year. And I share that for a reason, because, 2019, I don't know, the best script writer could not have even imagined, we'll use Shonda Rhimes as an example, could not have even created, as brilliant as her mind and creative is, anything that we experience. It was just one thing after another. And that was on top of our normal day to day. So last year was exceptional. So what it taught me is that we have to be, as you shared, very intentional about managing our lives. Some things that we cannot control, but the things that we can control, be very intentional about doing so. I want to add more than the 5, whatever, I can, but
right.
You again, and I've seen people who think they have a good grasp of it. And then the manifestation of that stress, surfaces in one form or another, but we certainly know it manifests in a way that is not always healthy.
Well, it's kind of funny. People work out, they count their steps. I mean, how many of our colleagues run around this university and they compete against one another about who gets the most steps in, right?
That's right. They're show-offs.
But they don't manage their stress. They don't take the time to manage their stress, and your stress level is just as important as your physical health.
Yeah.
It affects your physical health and it affects your psychological health.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, it's sad. This is true. Another source of stress for a lot of us are finances. Right? And people will sit down and they will spend a whole lot of time on their finances. And that's good. They should. Managing their budgets, these sort of things. Well, once your finances are in order, there's another source of stress that people have that is quite often a major source of stress. And that's time management.
Yes.
And I actually include in this whole thing that I've got together a section on time management.
Okay.
And time is infinitely more valuable than your money if you think about it.
Indeed.
You can always get more money. You may have to work hard to get it, but you can always get more money.
But
You
that
can't
time.
time, right?
That is so very true. That's true. And so again, I was very interested, intrigued by the instrument. And when you said I need to determine a way in which we can roll this out. And so what are you envisioning? I know there was a module that you were preparing that we're going to go to the faculty, and you also kind of modifying that for our students and then for our staff as well. So just give our viewers a kind of an understanding as to what an individual will experience when they're taking that exam or experiencing the module, if you will.
Well, it's not really an exam, and I don't want to do a module. Basically, if I were to publish this, it would be the stress handbook.
Okay.
All right. So the first part is about those major life changes. So which ones of these can you do something about? So you take a measure, the Holmes-Rahe scale, and look at your major life changes so you know where you stand. The second part is about another source of stress, daily hassles. There's an assessment that goes with daily hassles. And along with that is an assessment that goes with what we call uplifts. So uplifts are the things that happen that make us feel good. It turns out with your day-to-day stress, your daily hassles, things like misplacing your keys, are offset by the good things that happen daily. So the trick is to keep track of those and get a positive balance. You know, don't overdraw your checking account, so to speak.
Yes.
And then the next part, so it's in 4 parts. The next part is, let me keep it straight in my head here. The next part is related to time management.
Okay.
And I explained Covey's time management, a couple other different time management strategies. And then the final part is dedicated to more invasive stuff that people experience from time to time, things that everyone's kind of vulnerable to. So it addresses things like drug use, things like this, you know, that people may experience, psychotic symptoms that you might experience, things like that, so that people will know what they should do. So basically what it does is it steers you. You look at it and you say, well, oh, I fit this. Then I give you something that you can look at and say, okay, this is no big deal, or this might be a problem. It's not going to tell you it's a problem, but it's going to say this might be a problem. And then I steer you to wherever you need to go to get help. If you can't handle it on your own, if it's something you can handle on your own, hey, I got 21 tips in this thing to relieve stress. So you might can handle it on your own.
Okay. Okay. Outstanding. Thank you for that clarification, providing specifically to me about that is not an exam. It's not necessarily a module, but just an instrument that will, again, get you to think and help guide you. And certainly it resonated with me, help you to acknowledge what some triggers are, what some stressors are, and then moving into that, the management of those, being mindful of that. Share some of those tips that one might see once we've determined that my triggers are this, and this. How would some of the 21 that you may have listed, what are some of the things that we can just start practicing and employing right now?
Well, get organized.
Okay.
That's really simple, right? If you're one of these people who, and I have to admit, I have been this way. I'm not as bad as I used to be because I'm trying to take my own advice. But you walk in the house and you throw your keys on the table, or you throw your keys on the coffee table or on the counter, and then you get ready for your keys and have to run around 10 minutes and hunting them. That's stressing you out. That's a daily hassle. If you come up with a place and say, okay, this is where my keys go every day when I walk through the door, when you get ready to walk out the door, they're right there every time, that becomes automatic and it's no longer a source of stress. Just something that simple can help get rid of one daily hassle, right? Major things. And this was really weird right now because people are in very different places because of COVID. That's make time for alone time. Now, the reason I'm saying it's weird is if you were single and you went into this whole isolation bubble, you may be extremely lonely right now. You may have had too much alone time, right? You need to find somebody to hang out with.
Right.
It's hard to do right now. But if you were used to having a long time and you had to isolate, say, with family that you're not used to being around all the time, and y'all been shut up together in the house for 6-7 months, it can be pretty bad there too.
Sure.
Long time actually provides a stress buffer. If you spend the right amount of time alone, if you spend too much alone, then that's stress. But if you spend the right amount of time alone, it actually helps you take on more stress than you normally could. The same way with exercise. Physical exercise builds a stress buffer. And it doesn't have to be anything major. Recommendations are typically 150 minutes a week. A lot. You can get that much walking around the track a couple of times every few days, right? And intensity doesn't matter. It's just the actual act of the exercise. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. Those are great. I can attest to the walking piece, although I don't do it as much as I did it yesterday. I was pretty stressed and I'm like, I've got to walk some of this off. And it does work. You sleep better. It shifts, your mental lifts that fog, if you will. And so it's those little intentional acts that make a difference. And you were talking about adding 5 years on. Some days it's just, I need to get through the day. And what do I need to employ to ensure that I'm successful in that effort?
Well, the great thing about exercise, the reason that, having that type A personality is such a problem is hormones get dumped into your bloodstream and your body's okay at dealing with them in the beginning. So it cleans them out. And difference between your endocrine system or your hormones and your nervous system is your endocrine system is a slow messenger system. The nervous system's fast. Endocrine system's slow. So it dumps the hormones into your blood, they get circulated around, and that's how they get absorbed and used, right? Well, if you go into fight flight, which I'm sure everybody's heard of.
Yes.
Type A people go into fight flight a lot. This is what triggers the dumping of those hormones in your blood. So your body cleans it up and it takes a few hours because it's a slow process. It's got to filter all your blood. Well, if you go back into fight flight again too soon, your body sort of reacts and says, okay, apparently you really did need these. So I'm going to leave them in here longer this time.
Oh, wow.
Longer to clean them out. And that's where the problem comes with it causing your arteries to get hard because now these hormones are attacking your artery walls, right? So exercise actually helps burn up some of those hormones.
Okay.
Because they were dumped into your blood so that you could either fight for your life or run for everything that you possibly could.
Sure.
So if you get out and burn some of them or do some exercise, you're actually burning some of those hormones. So you're helping clean it out by using them.
Good
right?
deal. Well, I can already tell you right now, and I've not asked you, that we're going to have you come back so that we can discuss this in detail. And of course, the purpose was of this conversation was just to introduce to students and then our fellow colleagues that this instrument is coming out. We want them to take advantage of it because, of course, how they feel, how they function impacts their ability to perform on the job. So it's a multitude of benefits. But if you're not well, then I can't present well or perform well in our roles. So that's the goal of this. But I know our viewers are also benefiting. And it's just so critically important these days because we're still in the middle of, we're seeing a little light on the end of the tunnel, but there's still the stress of it. And then what I am concerned about and would love to have you come back to discuss is, the long-term effects of what we have endured over the last year. And I didn't even couple that with, of course, we dealt with the pandemic, we're dealing with the pandemic, but the social unrest that has been up close and personal in all of our lives. And we've been facing that on a day-to-day basis and living that. And so how is that taking a toll on us? And again, I'm always mindful of processing situations and moments because oftentimes we think we've dealt with it and we see it years down the road when you haven't dealt with it, but it dealt with you, if that makes any sense.
This is where the bucket comes in.
Okay.
So I have something major happen and it goes in my bucket. Maybe I've got room for it. I'm okay, right? So I'm carrying around this stress and I haven't dealt with it. Yeah. And a bunch of other things happen and they go in my bucket. And they don't have to be big things. 4 or 5 little things can go in there and make my bucket run over. I'm sick.
Gotcha. Yeah, we definitely have to have you back. But to our colleagues, our faculty and staff, and then our students, This instrument will be coming out within the next maybe month or so. And so they'll be receiving some information. I encourage everyone who has access to it once it's rolled out to certainly take advantage of it. It was certainly enlightening for me, and I continue to think about it, and which has helped me to, again, be more intentional. Mark, it was a pleasure having you on the show. And again, I look forward to having you come back. Maybe we can set up a date and we can announce the actual rollout date of this phase of the initiative.
Okay.
Great deal.
Awesome. That would be
Good
awesome.
deal. Good deal. Thank you for today.
Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Viewers, thank you for joining me for another edition of Realizing Potential. I'm Wendy Wilson, and I look forward to seeing you next time.